Well, it's 7 o'clock. I think we will start. Hopefully everybody's all happy today. This is basically the agenda for tonight. I'm going to welcome you. We'll have a presentation, then there'll be questions and some resources and a reminder of our next session. The meeting is about Halloween. It's a Halloween special, poisonous plants. And our speaker tonight is, I'll get it, Mary Carolyn. And Mary Carolyn was this past year one of our third-year interns, but she's getting ready to become a master gardener in the next few weeks. She has all kinds of studies, herbal studies, clinical nutrition. She's got such a variety of backgrounds, I can't even tell them all to you. But I am going to stop screen sharing and invite Mary Carolyn to take over.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, let me get my screen share there. And you guys tell me if you can see this. See, did it work? It still says disabled.
Oh, it says just, do you know, I'm sorry, I had that same issue last week. Apparently.
Do you have two co-hosts? Sometimes it doesn't like if there's.
It has to do, and I'm getting ready to go fix it. I can't remember if it's in this one. 1 second. I know last week I had to go in and do the same thing, and I just thought it was a random thing. Let's see. Oh, a screen share, there it is. Let's see.
It's still showing disabled.
It's still showing disabled?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe I'll have to go, hold on 1 second. I apologize. That, like I said, that happened to me last week, and it was very random. I thought Virginia Tech had a I thought that they allowed screen sharing, but apparently it isn't part of their automatic, let's see, this should be where it is. Settings. It's about 3/4 of the way down this list. I apologize. I should have already looked at this, and I just didn't think it would happen a second time. Hold on. There's only 50,000 of these options. I think, let's see. Chat, private chat. Well, it says all participants can screen share.
I'll try it again. It says host disabled, participant screen sharing.
That is very weird, because I'm checking and it says.
The only thing I can think is to log out and log back in. But.
Hold on. One participant can share at a time. Do you know what? That's funny. Now you should be able to.
Okay.
In the master account,
yay!
It says you can, but it's just on this particular one. I'm sorry. Good. Fixed.
Can you see it now?
Not yet. There.
You can see my slides now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Boom.
Now we can.
Okay. Does it keep going dark? It keeps I know the reason for the trouble. It's that it's Halloween. So everybody get used to it. It's supposed to be scary, including how Zoom goes. Okay, so thank you for the nice introduction. My name's Mary Carolyn, and I loved putting this presentation together. It's so much fun. I couldn't get any other work done today because it was so much fun working on this. And I do have a background in herbal studies, and so I'm very interested in foraging in the yard and eating weeds and looking for things. And one of my professors was, one of the courses was foraging. And when I was young, my dad was, relentless, teaching us poison oak, poison ivy, poison oak, poison ivy. So I do have a strong passion and interest in finding things in the yard and carefully identifying and eating them. Now, there are a lot of poisonous things out there, and so much so that Virginia Tech, along with one of the Master Garden groups, it wasn't ours, put together this project called the Socrates Project. And so that was to look at all the poisonous plants out there, because people get poisoned a lot. And there are a lot of poisonous things that aren't well advertised. So the theme here is to identify with diligence. And as always, this isn't intended to be medical advice, dietary advice, or, I'm not a horticulturist expert, just doing my best to research some of this interesting material. So here's our frightening agenda. We're going to have a list of select top toxic plants. Couldn't do all of them. There's so many. We'll talk a little bit about alkaloids, because alkaloids are the things that make it toxic in most cases. What are the plant compounds that make these plants toxic? I'll have photos and descriptions, and there are a lot of copycats. So at the end, we'll talk a little bit about Socrates Project, and then we'll have our fun plant clinic answering the questions on all those scary bugs that people sent in. I like to always tell people what my sources are when I get started. My photos, or some are mine, some are from Creative Commons, some are taken online, and I always give credit where it's due. And most of this is from Virginia Tech, where I get most of my material, since they sponsor the Master Gardeners, and also USDA and the Texas A&M University Agriculture Department. So we'll talk a little bit about these toxic plants: foxglove, hellebore, horse nettle, hemlock, mayapple, pokeweed, poison oak, ivy and sumac, Virginia creeper, and yew berries. And what is the trouble with all of these plants? It's many different compounds, but one of the main compounds are the alkaloids. And in ancient medicine, they may have used plants for a good purpose, to slow down the heartbeat or to treat people who had hypertension. Native American tribes are known to have used plants as herbal medicine, and they're also used currently in research, taking extracts for research in these types of things where you need the heart rate to slow down. Don't try this at home. This isn't something we want to do on our own. So these plants are very toxic. An alkaloid has an extra nitrogen atom, and a synthetic has 2 of them. There's in whatever, you know, if they're in certain compounds. So plants have these secondary metabolites, and for all the good compounds that plants have, they also have some that are just fine for birds and some that have other purposes, like keeping predators away from the plants. And they all have their reasons for being there. But in medical research, they can also take these extracts and use them for other purposes. So plants have all these secondary metabolites. The alkaloids include morphine, quinine, ephedrine. Remember back in the 80s, ephedrine, people were using that for weight loss, killed people. Strychnine and nicotine. Not good things. So you must carefully identify your plants. And Yvonne and I were talking earlier about elderberry. Boy, is it similar to pokeweed. It's scary. It grows, I see pokeweed growing all the time in our yard. And then we also buy elderberry jam. I'm like, wow, these look the same. Well, they do look the same. Do not eat them unless you really know what you're buying. When you want to buy some plants, let's say you want a native edible garden, make sure you're purchasing by the Latin name and you know exactly what you're getting. And I advise to know your own yard, your existing, what's in your yard. Don't just go off what someone tells you, but research it yourself before you buy a plant that you might want to eat. So here they are again, the foxglove, hellebore, horse nettle, hemlock, mayapple, pokeweed, and we won't really go over yew berries, but just to know, those are, you know, they look pretty, but they are toxic. And another one is nandina, is actually toxic, I think, to birds. That's an invasive species. They look really pretty. Those are the ones that are blooming right now with the beautiful red berries. Those are invasive. So the foxglove is one that nobody would want to eat, but it is very pretty in the yard. But this is a toxic plant. We're not going to go into too much detail on this one. But if you want to have a beautiful yard, there are plenty of plants that can serve the purpose that are not toxic. So that's all I'll say about foxglove. The hellebore is another one. It causes nausea and vomiting, cold sweat and vertigo, and it slows respiration and blood pressure and cardiac rhythm. So this one was another that was used in ancient folk medicine to treat a rapid heartbeat or high blood pressure. It was also used in the 50s and 60s as an anti-hypertension type of medicine, of course, very small extracts. This elderberry comparison on the left and right, you can see how similar these are. My goodness, you really want to identify this one. You would think that the pokeweed is clearly standing out with this purple stem, and it is, but then the elderberry has a little bit of purplish in it, and maybe looking at how the berries come out of each little clump is one way to identify it. But if you do want to grow elderberry for their wonderful qualities, then make sure you identify and purchase elderberry. And also pokeweed grows really quickly. So if anyone's had pokeweed, you know you can pull it up easily at the beginning, but then it grows so fast. Pretty soon it's 2 feet tall and it's jammed in there and it doesn't want to come out. Here's another kind of scary one is the horse nettle. It looks like a tomato. We've had these right in our yard. They look like little miniature cross between a little mini watermelon and a yellow tomato. So it's spiny. And a lot of times if things, except for the stinging nettle, which is nutritious, the things that are spiny or furry, that's a good sign that they do not want humans to eat them. The horse nettle has white to purplish flowers, and it does well in disturbed habitats. And that's why in my yard, it was growing on the hill and a place where it got no water. And it just kind of came up in one of the most neglected areas of my yard. This is another look at pokeweed and how it looks. In this picture, they don't look as much like elderberry, and it looks a little more like the invasive species that it is. So poison oak and ivy. There's a few phrases, and poison ivy has 3 leaves and they're generally shiny. Poison oak also has 3 leaves. Sometimes they're more matte, but the phrases are leaves of 3, leave them be, long middle stem, don't touch them, and hairy vine, no friend of mine. So I have a couple pictures of those. Here's a picture of poison ivy. And this is just found all over the place. I'm sure you've seen it before. The young plants are usually shiny, and but they can get dull, but you're looking for the 3 leaves. And it's Virginia creeper that has 5 leaves. But poison oak can also grow a little bit differently and have come in clumps of possibly 5 to 7 leaves. So you really have to watch out. This is an example of poison oak. It's similar to poison ivy, except it looks like oak leaves. And this is the conifer hemlock. And I know there are certain evergreens that can be made into a tea, but you don't want to do that with a hemlock or a yew. And so what happened with Socrates? Socrates was a Greek philosopher. He's the source of the Socratic method that they use in schools today. I know my children had to follow that method in school, and it's very common, and it teaches people to think outside the norm and explore different realms of thought. And Socrates was found to be a criminal for teaching children to think for themselves and to question the status quo. So that was his crime, and his punishment was to drink hemlock tea, which he did and died from that. And then I think it was when Plato wrote books about him, Plato was his student, he chronicled in detail how he died and how it's pretty gruesome to read. So I was reading it and I didn't want to read it anymore. But he chronicles exactly what happens as the heart rate slows and the body stiffens up. So it's pretty gruesome, but a great Halloween story if you need to come up with one around a campfire. Well, we just happen to have a hemlock in our yard, and I took some pictures, but I didn't get them up yet in this presentation. And it also doesn't look as pretty as it did, but we had a water hemlock, and my son, Kevin, who is here tonight, also noticed this and said, we should take this out. And I said, yes, we'll take it out in the fall, but the pollinators were going crazy for this hemlock, and it smelled delightful. And I just couldn't take it away from all these pollinators. They were literally on this plant every day. It just grew up out of nowhere. Well, sure enough, when I identified the leaves, it looks exactly like this. So This is what it is. It will grow up very quickly. This plant seemed to grow in no time flat. Started out, kind of looks like a pretty little plant, looks like a carrot family type of plant, and then pretty soon the leaves grow straight out into these spiky, thin, pretty leaves. It's also a member of the Queen Anne's lace type of family, or type beet, as my kids would say. So poison hemlock, when it's young, it looks like a carrot. And I've seen these in different places in our yard, and so maybe you have too. Here's another picture of the picture of the horse nettle that I spoke about earlier. And here are the little tomato-like fruits on the vine. So these are nightshades, and it's in the tomato family. Gina. And the nightshades have alkaloids. And if you think about when potatoes turn green, if they're sitting out, you buy potatoes and in a week they're green and you're not supposed to eat them, it's because of the carbohydrate saturation change, and there are more alkaloids in that. So that is a reason that it becomes kind of toxic. Thank you, Kevin. So the alkaloid in hemlock is conine, and it's so deadly that people have died from just eating animals such as game birds that have eaten the hemlock seeds. Sorry, switched back to hemlock there for a second. This is the picture of the horse nettle that looks exactly like a cherry tomato. And we had one in our yard, and I knew it didn't look right. We didn't eat it, thankfully. First of all, it was not growing near the tomatoes, which isn't a sure sign of anything, because we didn't plant a single tomato this year. They all, all the pollinators scattered all the seeds around. We had tomatoes all over the yard. But this one was in the front yard, and the tomato looking fruit is really hard. So it doesn't have any soft texture like a tomato. And this is another picture of the pokeweed. And that's why I thought, for my own yard, when I saw this growing up right by our air conditioner, and of course it wants to destroy the air conditioner, so we have another repair bill. But it grows really, really fast with these bright red stems. And here are some more pokeweed pictures. So I just want to also talk a little bit about poison ivy versus Virginia creeper. And Virginia creeper has 5 leaves. It will crawl up the tree, and poison ivy has 3. And you also have poison sumac. So poison oak and ivy and sumac all kind of have a similar look. One thing about poison ivy is it does not grow side by side. There's one and then another clump. And poison oak is usually as a shrub, not a climbing vine. This is just a little bit of the scientific information about poison sumac. So the Socrates project from Virginia Tech is a very good project that Virginia Tech took on with the Virginia gardeners, Virginia Master Naturalists, and the Old Rag Blue Ridge Master Gardener Group. And they did this because they were getting so many calls into the Poison Control Center at Blue Ridge Poison Control Center in Virginia. And they believed that there are many more cases of poisoning, even if it's just a rash. There are, you don't want people to be near these plants. You want people to learn to identify them. So this Socrates project was an effort by Virginia Tech and the gardening groups to educate the public, just like we do. We try to get the word out. And I think it's very important because we want kids to get outside, and we want to encourage people to become master gardeners and to learn more about nature and to identify plants. And so it becomes even more important that we teach people what the poisonous plants are. And this was really, in this presentation, a tiny handful of what's out there. Another one is the Mayapple. And when I was researching this, I was surprised to find a video of a woman, talking about eating Mayapples and how she grows them and can't wait to eat them. Well, the unripe fruit is toxic. So the green fruit is toxic. And turns out the ripened yellow fruit is edible in teeny tiny amounts. So wow, just don't have it at all. I mean, pick something else. I wouldn't want to test that one out for sure. So, and this over on the left is the yew, and this is the hemlock, this white one. So we've got quite a few scary plants around, and just to handle with caution. One thing that isn't poisonous is the pumpkin. So I hope you enjoy plenty of pumpkin this weekend and into Thanksgiving. And that's about it. Happy Halloween to everyone. And after this, we have our questions about the scary stink bugs that people have sent in.
Thank you so much, Mary Carolyn. That was awesome.
You're so welcome.
I'm going to stop your screen share.
Okay.
And I'm going to share mine here.